your invite, it says as is and to be. So, yeah. So we're going to be going through an overview of gap analysis, basically to say, what is it? What does it entail? We look at the benefits of carrying out a gap analysis. We look at the process, and then I'd like us to, take a practical approach. So I've put together kind of like a scenario, and we can work at it at the end of the session, because I believe, the best way to, kind of internalize these things is when you practice. So it will be a simple example, but at least it will be an opportunity for us to see what is expected, and how it could be done with a simple example. All right, so what is gap analysis? As we can see on the slide, it's an analysis of the current state, also known as your as is, a definition of the future state, and you can call that your to be, and the steps and activities that need to happen in order to transition from the current state to the desired state. So in order to carry out a gap analysis, you will first of all identify the current state, and then you go ahead and define what the future state is, what you want the system or the process to look like. And then obviously there will be a difference in the two. And then you want to go ahead and identify the steps and activities that you need to take or put in place in order to move from point A to B, A being your as is and B being your to be. So a gap analysis will help an organization understand the gap between where they are now and where they want to be. And obviously, like as we said before, and the steps needed to close that gap. So from the steps, you'll be able to produce an action plan, aligning the actions to achieve each step so that over time, the gap becomes smaller and it's eventually completely closed. So what this means is that there will always be an outcome of your gap analysis. Essentially, if you were to carry out a gap analysis and there's no outcome, it's just, I would say it's like an exercise in futility, really, because the whole point of engaging in the exercise really is to have an action plan, is to, cause change. You find that sometimes you have like a change document after you've completed the exercise, after you've completed a gap analysis, because you'd have identified the things that need to be done. And obviously you want to go ahead and put a mechanism or a plan in place to be able to achieve those steps or those actions that you have identified. Right, so this is just a visual illustration, of what the gap analysis is. So you can see on the image in front of you, you've got where you are and where you want to be, and there is like a wide gap. So you can imagine, like, I mean, if it were in the movies, you can imagine that at the bottom of that gap, there'll probably be like a river and there'll be rocks and all that, right? I'm just trying to for us to visualize it. So the essence of the gap analysis is really to find out a way that you can jump from this piece of rock or land, I don't know, suspended land, to the next one safely, really, and the best possible way. So you probably maybe want to get a ladder, whatever it is, but I mean, you get what we're trying to say here. Where you are versus where you want to be. And obviously there is a gap that has to be bridged to get you from this point to that point. So this is just a visual illustration. So when you're thinking about gap analysis, it's, as the name suggests, there is a gap. There is a gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And the whole point of carrying out a gap analysis is to find out how you can bridge that gap, how you can get from point A to point B. So I think visuals kind of help us, or help these concepts stick better. So when they say gap analysis, it shouldn't really be something that's kind of like a mystery topic, I mean, if you picture it like this, it's simple enough to see that there is a gap between the two positions and they're trying to bridge that gap. Okay. Right. Okay. So before we go further, we just want to, talk about the benefits of carrying out a gap analysis. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be doing something that's pointless. So if there are no benefits, then there's no point going ahead with it. But there are benefits, as experience will suggest, the benefits of involving or carrying out, getting involved, in a gap analysis or carrying out one. So the first point here says improves product quality and performance. So I mean, if you were to think about it, gap analysis, it promotes, that idea of improvement. So I mean, you're analyzing where you are and you're identifying that it could be better. If you also think about it, like every time you do even like a one-to-one or a performance review, you're almost kind of, involved in the gap analysis. And I'm using this word loosely, right? But I'm just trying to give us, illustrations and examples that might bring it to life for us. So every time you're reviewing something, thinking about it, and they're asking you, what went well? Okay, what can you do better? What could you have done better? It's just opening your mind to the possibilities that there is a better state you can improve. So gap analysis lends itself towards quality improvement in quality and performance. It can be used as a tool to help optimize costs. So for example, so yeah, the first example I gave was about performance, right? Like in your performance review. The second example talks about cost. So you can actually focus your gap analysis in the area of cost. So if you were reviewing cost, the cost that an organization incurs, and you want to say, okay, so what did they spend money on? What are the costs, like the fixed costs, the running costs, short term, long term, everything? What's the budget and everything? Okay, so this is what we're spending now. But in order for us to make a healthy profit, we need to drive costs down. So how do we go about that? You know that simple analysis is also like a form of gap analysis, because you've identified where you are now, and then you've identified an objective, a goal that you want to achieve, like you want to drive costs down. So you then also want to say, how do we drive costs down? What are the things we need to do to reduce our spending? Okay, so it can be a benefit of gap analysis can be that it helps the organization to optimize cost. In the same way, it can help save time. So you can say, okay, turnaround time, to process this, maybe this application, or to complete this process is maybe 5 hours, for example, just as an example. We've been having customer complaints that they really want to hear from us by the end of day. But if it's still 5 hours, there's no way we'll be able to complete the process and get back to the client or the customers before close of day. So we want to reduce the time we spend in completing this process from 5 hours to 2 hours. So you can already see how we're thinking about time and how to optimize time, how to make the best use of our time. Gap analysis can also help to improve efficiency. So you're trying to think of how to get something done with the least possible waste. What's the best way to achieve this result? Like, so do you need to automate systems to kind of like, so it's a combination of cost, time, and all that. What do you need to do to make sure that this system is performing performing at its optimal best? So I put a note at the bottom, the considerations of cost, quality, and time. When you're talking about a project, these three things, there's an interplay of these three things. And sometimes you have to negotiate, like if you want to drive costs down, you might have to sacrifice quality a bit. Or if you want something that's of a high quality, it might cost you. Or if you want it to be of a high quality, it might take you so much time. So there are considerations that kind of interplay when you are involved in a project. So this is just an example to show how when you carry out a gap analysis exercise, it can help you, to create the right balance between cost, quality, and time considerations. So these are other benefits as well. So if I even be more specific, it helps determine if the company meets its desired level of practice. So for example, if you know how every organization has their mission, their vision, and all that, and these things are translated into like goals, and we talk about SMART goals and all that. We talk about KPIs, things like that. So we've got targets. I mean, in your places of work, you might even have like your, what am I saying? You might even, everyone has, agreed targets. So you meet maybe at the start of the year to say, to list out things that you want to achieve for the year, your development plans. Yeah, if there are areas you've, identified that you want to improve on and all that. So you have those targets. And after some time has passed, there will be a review, right? And then there will be that comparison. Okay, so this was what we said we wanted to do, and this is what we have done. So how are we performing compared to what we have said we want to achieve? So gap analysis can help a company meet that desired level of practice. So because you're going to compare where are we versus where we want to be. So we said we want our profit margin to increase by 25%. We said that at the start of the financial year, and the year is like, so we're maybe like in the second quarter and we're having a review. By how much have we been able to drive our profit margin to have things improved? If they haven't improved, what is the reason behind it? And when we find out the reason, how can we, address it? So you see how you can use the gap analysis. So even in the simplest of forms, to help compare where you are as opposed to where you should be, and then help identify the reasons for any difference. Okay. Second point here says it encourages a culture of continuous improvement. Again, this is tied to like the performance. It goes without saying, if you're constantly making that comparison, then you would want to do better. A simple example, just as we used, if you have most organizations have that culture of continuous improvement. So you will never get to a point in an organization where you say, I've done my very best. There's nothing else I can do. There's nothing else I can improve on. So no matter how good your feedback is during your one-to-one session, they will always ask you like, okay, so other things you can do. Maybe not your one-to-one session, it might be like your 6-monthly review or your yearly review. Like, okay, so what are your, so it might not even be any negative feedback. It might be, what are your development goals? Like, so yeah, you're doing well, but they want to, you want to be seen as always be ready to learn, always wanting to improve on your existing skills. You always want to, find out a better way of doing things, and you want to adapt as you go along. So, by engaging a company engaging in gap analysis, it just shows that they buy into that culture of continuous improvement. So remember how we said that at the end of a gap analysis, you would have an action plan. If you think about it in that way, then you can see how it helps scopes out the areas where new requirements and capabilities would need to be implemented, because the output of the gap analysis is usually a change strategy which outlines the requirements. So what this means is that when you've checked your current state, check your future or desired state, and you've identified the gap, you would then have an action plan which lists out all the things you need to do to take you from point A to point B, and those will form your requirements. They will inform your requirements. Okay, right. So another thing to for us to think about is how useful can the gap analysis be. And that's why in answer to that, I've said gap analysis can be applied from one or more of the following perspectives. What this means is that you can apply gap analysis to different aspects of a business. Okay, so you can take it from an organizational perspective. What that means is that you want to review the skill sets or roles that are missing or lacking in that organization. So you want to have a proper review, of the organization. Maybe compare it with industry standard, or best practices. Like you say, Okay, so we are for example, like give now, let's say, yeah, we are a car manufacturing company, for example. Well, that is over my over my head because I'm not good with cars. But yeah, let's just, for the sake of an example, right? We are a car manufacturing company, right? And we want to make maybe like electric cars, like there's a thing for it now, and people, that industry is quickly moving away from petrol and then diesel cars, and people are going electric, right? So you're saying, okay, at the moment we only produce maybe diesel cars and petrol cars and maybe hybrid, but we are looking that in the next 10 to 15 years, we will want to start making electric cars. So that's you already analyzing your current state. You're already defining where you want to be. Now you start asking yourself, what are the skill sets we need, or the roles that are missing from the organization? So we need, obviously, at the simplest of levels, you need somebody with the skill set, or someone that is experienced in making electric cars. So this is a very simple example, right? But you get the whole point, right? So you should be looking for, you might even want to kind of inquire or do your research, like so what's this car now that Tesla? Yeah, you might probably want to do a case study and all that, to do your research and find out, okay, what do we need to be a company like Tesla? Like, what are the skill sets we need, and what roles are missing that would take us from point A to point B. So that's looking at things from an organizational perspective. And when you talk about organization, you are referring to skill sets and roles. So do you need like a technical director for, I don't know, electric cars or something? I'm making that up anyway. Yeah. And what do you need? What level of skill do you need? So you might want to bring people in with the relevant know-how, and then you might want to upskill and train your existing staff. Okay, moving on. Business direction is another perspective that you can apply gap analysis. So again, let's even use, I don't know which example will I give now. Business direction. So what we said here is to identify a gap in a product, or a gap in the market that the business isn't currently serving. So the business can do like some research and an analysis to identify that, okay, we've covered this market, right? And okay, let me use a fashion industry, in the fashion industry, for example. Let's assume that this business, they only cater to female clothing and all that. They might say, okay, we're doing so well here. However, there's a high demand for kids clothes. So it might be an area that they want to consider. So that's an area of the market that they are not currently, in. So you might want to analyze that and see how can we maximize, how can we kind of take advantage of that increasing demand for children's clothes. So that's a gap in the market that you're not currently serving. So you might have to diversify or expand the business, or it might be that you now want to go into a niche market. Like, okay, you want to move from high, is it what they call, is it high street fashion to like luxury fashion. So it might be just thinking about what are you offering now to your customers, and how can you expand that. Is there a need that you can meet that you're not currently meeting? So that's another way, another perspective the gap analysis can be applied from. Another one is business processes. This is pretty much, in fact, the last two are the ones you probably see more often, than the first two, because those first two, they are still done, like, but at a really high up the chain scale, like, so when you're thinking about the direction that your business wants to take and all that, those are really strategic decisions. But I'm just so more often than not, you find yourself analyzing business processes and technology. So from the perspective of business processes, you're considering how how can the things we do be made more efficient? And we talked about this when we were talking about the when we mentioned the advantages, like, efficiency. Like, so we are currently engaged in a process, and you want to consider, like, how much time does it take you to complete that process? How many people do you require to complete that process? Is there a way we can make this process more efficient and drive down wastage so that people can focus on more value added activities? So a lot of times when people try to sell automation, they come from the angle of, why are you doing this monotonous and repetitive task? Wouldn't it be a better use of your time if we get it automated, and you can then focus on value added activities instead? So for example, with automation, the roles of accountants, we know, have changed over the years. In the past, it was balancing the ledger, debit, credit, do this, do that, like the core accounting rules. But over time, as technology, has been introduced and times are changing, it's now been discovered that you can automate some of these systems, and some of these processes. That way, you don't need the core accounting. So you don't need people to start, doing your trial balance. Sorry, I'm using accounting terms, but your trial balance, your what they call them, account and all, debit this, debit the, is it debit the receiver, credit giver? I've always never fully understood that thing. But yeah, you don't now need people to do all that because it can be automated. Somebody writes a code somewhere, and as you put in the amount, as you're posting, that's what it is, you're posting it. But now you don't do manual posting, you're now posting it automatically. So you just feed in the values and everything goes where it should. What the accountant will now be doing is value-added activities. So management accounting, making informed decisions based on the results of that process. Okay, so again, this is how gap analysis can help you, like, analyze a process to see how you can be more efficient. Okay, the last one we'll put here is technology. Again, that refers to like your IT, and I've already mentioned automation as well. So you want to identify what are the systems that are missing, or are there incompatibilities between existing systems? If you think about it, when you want to make so if you go on maybe the next website, next online, and you want to buy something, right? By the time you get to the page where you click on something to, I'm assuming as BAs, you've already started writing your user stories, and you've already started thinking about how these systems work and how you expect systems to respond when you perform certain actions. Okay, so think about it when you go on like next online, next.co.uk, and you see an outfit that you like, you put in your basket, and you eventually are redirected to your payment page. What happens when you want to make the payment? You know that you see some fields, you put in your name, maybe like your card details and all that. So you might have options actually. You might have options. Nowadays, the the economy or the system that we are operating in, they actually encourage you to, like, you can make your payment via a number of different options. So if you even want to make that payment in 6 installments, you'll be able to do that. Or if you want to make a one-off payment, like your card payment, your credit card or debit card, if you want to use PayPal, So think about it. There's an interaction, an interplay between systems, right? So imagine if you got there and they said it was only cash payment. That online transaction would be void, isn't it? Because you cannot do that online. But they have found a way to, be able to link you to other systems, to other platforms. You then go make that payment and you're redirected back. Sometimes you even get a prompt in your bank app, and they're saying, do you want to confirm if this transaction is what's the word? It's not a fraudulent one, and then you go and click OK, and then you go back and everything is fine. So a business might have existing systems that don't speak to each other, but should be speaking to each other to make their processes smoother. So this is just an illustration of how gap analysis can help, or the perspectives, so you can review a business in different perspectives. You can look at the structure, the organizational structure. You can look at big business direction. That is a strategic, analysis. You can look at the business processes, or you can look at the existing technology. Okay, and while you are doing this, and this is not only for business analysis, for gap analysis, as a business analyst, you should be able to ask the right questions. And it doesn't mean that there will be one day where you get to know all the right questions you should be asking, but as you practice and as you meet people, you then start to know, okay, I should have asked this, because if I had asked this, I wouldn't have been going back, with a follow-up question, So there are some questions that we just have to ask every time we're presented with a scenario, every time we're going into a meeting, whether it's a requirement elicitation, whatever meeting it is. We should just always have some questions at the back of our mind. What, when, where, who, how. You know that these 5 points that I listed here, they can generate a host of follow-up questions, right? What, when, where, who, and how. So just have that. You should always have that, mind that constantly questions everything. What is happening? When is it going to happen? Where is it happening? Who is responsible for it? How is it going to happen? So I've just given a very basic illustration of that. But what, when, where, who, and how? These are good questions to ask. And if we're going to be doing a gap analysis, you want to be thinking about that. So, have I not gone ahead of myself? All right, okay. This slide should probably have come after, but it's all good because the next thing we're going to be talking about is the steps, Now, for the steps the steps that you carry out when you're engaging in gap analysis, it depends on who you consult and what material you go you research, and you might have different answers, right? Some might tell you there are 4 steps, some might say there are 5 steps, some might even say 6 steps. Don't let that throw you off. It depends on who you ask, and it depends on what resource you are referring to. One thing you will note, whether 4, 5, or 6 steps, at the end of the day, the result is the same. So what I want you to take away from this workshop today is that there isn't anything set in stone, right? Like, what I mean by that is you use what works for you as far as you're getting the desired result. So whether 4 steps or 5 or 6, if you check it, they are loosely the same thing. It's just that sometimes some people might break 1 step into 2, and some people might just merge 1. At the end of the day, what is going to happen is that there must be a current state, a future state, a gap, as well as the actions that you need to implement. Okay, so those things, no matter whether they say there are 4 steps in gap analysis or 5 or 6, these will be your final result. So if you were to go to an interview and they say, how many, you shouldn't even be asked, but ask that kind of question, right? But if you are asked, like, how many steps are there in gap analysis, you should be able to defend whatever position you take. So if you say 4, you should list what the 4. You shouldn't just say 4. You should say 4 and list them, so that the person asking you will be experienced to know that you've covered all the areas. So if you say 5, then you should be able to say list the 5 and defend your position. If you say 6, the same thing applies. So regardless of whether you say 4, 5, 6, because if you were to go Google right now, if I were to share my screen and Google steps of gap analysis, you would see different answers. Some will say 5, or some will say, what are the 5 steps, or what are the 4 steps, what are the 6? If I put those 3 questions, what are the 5 or 4 or 6 steps, I would find answers. Okay, but don't let that throw you off, because at the end of the day, this will ultimately be the result of the exercise that you're going to be doing, to be getting. So at the end of the day, like we said at the start, you want to identify your current state, your future state. You want to identify the gap, and then what actions do I need to take to get me from the current state, to the desired state? In other words, what actions do I need to take to close the gap? So again, if you want to apply those questions that we talked about in the previous slide, what, when, where, who, and how, what you have in front of you is kind of like an example. of when you apply those questions. So for your current state, you want to be asking, what happens? I would like us to pay close attention because we are going to do an exercise at the end, and it'll be helpful if you kind of have an understanding of what we're doing just now, so that we can have a really engaging session when we go into the when we try to do the practical bit. Okay, so for the current state, you want to be asking, what happens or what is happening? So this is a very broad thing, but you can interpret it any way you like. So just imagine a process. You want to really find out what is happening here. What is happening here? What is the confusion? So what are the pain points? What are the challenges? When is it done? So like, is it a process? Is there a certain time it's done? Is it an upload? Is there a time you have to do the upload? Or is it real time? Is it something that happens overnight? Like I remember years ago when I was working years ago, it was in an investment company. You would have like overnight runs. So you put in the it was for pensions and all that, and all the pension funds. So you put in the customer selections and you submit it, but then it will go on an overnight run, and by the next day, everything that you've put in will be generated and will be showing on the customer's account. There was the same process can be done real time. So as you're putting it in, there's something else another process you will do, and then it will trigger it immediately. So yeah, when is it done? Is it an instant thing? Is it an overnight run? How many times a week is it done, or how many times a day? Does it have to be done at a certain time? You see, I've already come up with about 5 questions relating to when is it done. Who does the work? And then if you can even drill down to how many, so who does the work can even mean, tell me the people, what level are they in the business, how many people. So is it only one team? Do they interact with another team to get this work done? You see how that simple question, who does the work, has already been magnified and broken down into a number of different questions. How is this sequenced? That means in what order? So does this one thing have to happen before another thing? So for example, if I go back to, I'm going to use something that we can all relate to. So now we're writing user stories and all that. So think about it, and I think now you should already be writing stories about functionalities. Okay, so if you were to have 2 buttons on any landing page or a platform, and one is the sign up and the login, in terms of sequence, which one will be first? Can somebody let me know? Sign up and login, which one will be first? Which one will happen
Sign up.
first? Sign up.
Sign up.
Okay.
Sign
Thank
up
you.
first.
Sign up.
Yes, thank you. So that's what we mean by sequence, as in what order? Of course, because if you're a first-time user on that platform, you first have to sign up, and then when you come back, whether it's a minute after or the next day, you can then log in. So obviously, when you be writing your user stories, you then, for the first one, for the sign up, you'll be saying as a first-time user or as a new user, and then the second one will be for the login, it will be as a registered user. Okay. So I've given you tips that you can actually go and use for your user stories. So as a registered user, so for some processes, one thing has to happen before another thing happens. So what we say now? So let's imagine like a typical banking arrangement. You would first, apologies, I'm going to use a banking arrangement in Nigeria because that's what I can relate to. I can't remember how many times I've gone into a physical bank in the UK here. So I'm going to use the Nigerian bank. So you would go in, and then like, I'll give you an example. When we used to go pay in like our fees in uni, you go in and then you fill, so you have your cash, right? You fill in, they call it a teller. You fill in your details, how much you want to pay, the organization you're paying to, University of da 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 da. Well, I schooled in University of Benin, so I put University of Benin, put your name, put your everything, and how much, and da 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 da. You put everything together, you join the queue. And then you hand everything in, they take the money from you, and then it'll be counted and deposited, so all that will take a while before it will then register as in, and then when they've collected the money, they would give you your confirmation. I can't remember what it used to be, but you will have some form of confirmation, like I think a slip, a payment slip or something, So my point is, one thing will happen before another thing. So in order to establish the current state of any process, you want to carefully, you don't want to miss any step. So you see how I said you fill out your your details, you join the queue, you hand over everything, it's counted, verified, and they, sometimes they even sometimes the sorting goes on in front of you, sometimes not. And they verify the amount that is exactly what you said it is, then give you maybe do some stamping thingy, and then give you back your slip, And then sometimes you have to take that slip back to your university department and then hand that in as proof of payment. They too, they stamp something and write something and say you've registered and blah blah blah. So I'm just giving like a rough guide. I'm not even sure if I'm actually accurate, but you get the gist. So there are some things that will happen. Something has to happen before another thing. So how is this sequenced? So I'm hoping that with these questions that we've outlined here, you can see how when you're trying to analyze the current state, you have to be asking the right questions. So going back to that same job I was telling us of, this is years and years ago when I was working in the investment company. I then moved from customer service to the change department, and on one of those projects, I was told to go and shadow. So I'm already going into telling you how this thing works, because we're going into the steps from the next slide. So I was told to go and shadow some members of staff just to understand how the process works. So I would turn up in the morning, sign in or whatever, and then go upstairs and sit down by the person doing the work. And I will be looking, like learning the process, and asking questions. So why did you click on that button? Or they're like, oh, you should never touch that button. I'm like, why? Some people will tell you, I don't know. You don't ask me why, and then you're taking notes. Okay, so what does that button really do and all that? So you're shadowing, like you're observing and checking. When they do this happens. When they do this happens, or this is what they have to do first for this to happen. So there are different ways different techniques you can use to arrive at those answers. But you see, these questions are quite important. What happens? What's the confusion? When is it done? Who does the work? How is it sequenced? And then the future state, what it should look like, where will it change, when will it change, who will do this, how will it be timed and resourced. So what do we want the new process to be? So I'm using process. It could be processes or products. So it doesn't necessarily have to be. So it could be that you manufacture, like I said, a car, and you want an improved version. So how do I want it to look like? Where will it change? Like, okay, so what are the changes that are going to happen maybe on the body of the car? And when is it when can we realistically, bring about that change? Who is going to be responsible for it? Who are the people, the departments, the manufacturers we have to contact, the people we need to seek advice from, and all that? How will it be timed and resourced? So are we going to do it incrementally? So are we going to be coming up with, like I said, I'm bad with cars, but I'm assuming they come up with versions, right? Like models, right? Not versions. Versions are for like IT systems. So they come up with models like maybe this is the 2005 model, 2023 model, and all that, So how will it be timed and resource? Are we going to make it incremental, or are we just going to say it has all the shiny new features in one go in this great fancy car? So these are considerations that we have to be made. Then in terms of the gap. So when you've asked those questions, you've seen what your current state is, what your future state should look like. Then you're not saying, what is the difference between what we've got now and what we want? Where will it be different? Again, um, how are the changes going to affect, or what has to change? When are the differences needed? So what time? Who will identify the gap? So who's responsible for all this? How will the gap be improved? Apologies, there's a typo there. How will the gap be improved on? So improving the gap really means closing up the gap in case there's any confusion there. So remember we said that for every gap analysis, there must be, a final outcome, and this would be the actions that you need to take to close the gap. If you don't have this last one, there really was no point, engaging in that exercise. So What will be done to address the gap? Where will it be addressed? When will it be addressed? Who will make the decision? How will it be rolled out? So you see, the who will make the decision, that's also a good one, because that's where you're talking about product owners and people that own the, like people that are driving that change and want it, or stakeholders. How will it be rolled out? If it's something that has to do with processes or products or IT and all that, of course, the development team will have to come in there, like to make those changes. The BA, you see where the BA will be. In fact, everything here, these are like you see the role of the BA in gap analysis. This is what you're responsible for, documenting all this. Okay, so moving on, we've now so we've actually addressed the steps, but I just want us to be more specific. So I think I can't even remember if I've done 4 or 5 steps, but again, like I said, whether we end in 4 or 5, we are going to capture all the aspects of gap analysis. So the first one here is to identify the area to be analyzed and the goals to be accomplished. So you want to let's decide, like, in the organization, what part of the business are you targeting? So it's not the whole organization. Like, so it might just be one part of the business that you're trying to target. And then when you've identified that, what's the goal? So the first point here says identify the perspective you're considering. So how we talked about the organizational perspective, the business directional perspective, a business process or technology perspective. So what are you considering? Are you trying to change the structure of the organization, or are you thinking in a strategic way? Like, are there markets that you want to break into, or is there a business process you want to improve, or some existing technology that you want to leverage on? So these are things that you want to look at. So when you identify that, you then define the problem, and that's where you have your business goals and all that. So define the problem you're trying to solve or the opportunity you're trying to take advantage of. And that's where you get your business goals, objectives, and an outcome. Very important is the fact that these would, eventually drive your business requirements. Now, in order to define your business goals, objectives, and outcomes, they're usually given by your stakeholders or your product owners, or whatever name they are designated by. But as a business analyst, you are meant to facilitate the process, and make sure that they are clearly articulated and the objectives are measurable, and that there's a shared understanding of the business requirements. So again, you see the role of a business analyst in that you're trying to elicit requirements and document them in a way that is clear and easy to understand, with measurable objectives. And then the team has a shared understanding of what the business wants to achieve. So essentially, that is the role of a business, or one of the roles, of a business analyst. So yeah, identifying the areas to be analyzed and the goals to be accomplished. The next point is step 2, analyze the current state. So we've discussed all those questions that you need to ask: what, when, how, who, So, but here, if we're going to drill down and be more, and go into more details, you want to review the current procedures, organizational charts, process maps, and anything to give additional context. And then we mentioned carry out shadowing for key areas involved in the initiative. I gave an example of shadowing as well. So if we go back to this first point of reviewing procedures, organizational charts, process maps, and anything to give additional context, this is where most of the work goes into identifying the current state, because sometimes if a business or the stakeholders might not even know the desired state. They might just say, oh yeah, we want a shiny new product, a shiny new platform or whatever, but they don't really know what that means. So you might have to do the groundwork. Remember how we said that they will tell you the business goals and all that, but you have to facilitate it. So you have to do everything to encourage that, brainstorming and thinking, but you have to do your research. It will start with your research. So understanding the current process, that is where a lot of the work goes in. So you have to review some, it might end up, reviewing loads and loads of documentation, organizational charts that will help you understand who does what, who is the financial controller, who is the, who is the person in charge of this department, how many people report to this person, does he have, you can even do like, there are a range of techniques and things that you can use. If you might want to identify, do a bit of stakeholder analysis, like who are the people that have vested interest in this current process, like who are the people that are affected by it. Because guess what, if you are trying to do to make any changes or improvement, they are the people that you'll be dealing with and negotiating with and selling your ideas to. Okay, so stakeholder management, remember that. So you see how all these different things that you've been learning just, kind of are fluid and tie into each other. So there's a bit of this and that in the whole thing. So yeah, reviewing procedures, organizational charts, process maps, so process map is actually good when you are able to identify that after when I click on this happens and that happens and that, or when I finish this process, I hand it over to this other one. So you can now document everything in a clear diagram. And when you see it that way, it might actually bring the whole process to life, and you can clearly see, oh, there's some duplication here. Oh, there's a step that we don't really need here. Oh, this is a redundant a feature, or we don't need this, we can take that out, or this can be automated, so you can start identifying. So that's why it's very important to analyze your current state, because it can help you form your desired state. Because again, remember how we said you might be asking, what are the how did we word it then? Let me take you back so I can show you. How did we word it? What are the confusions? Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. What is the confusion? Okay. So for your current state. Okay. So when you then get this information, you want to model or describe the process with the endpoint of what? Identifying the problem areas. For example, what causes contributed to the targets being missed. So for example, if you're doing like a cost, maybe like an analysis, of targets, and you're like, okay, the department keeps missing their targets, and then you want to identify like what are the factors that contribute to these targets being missed. Are the workers not properly trained? Is it that the production floor is short-staffed, or they don't have the required materials, to kind of that they need to produce that piece of work? Or is it that the layout of a production floor slows things down? So you're trying to, identify problem areas. Again, we worded that slightly differently to say what is the confusion, okay, for current state. Okay. Now you want to define the ideal future state. So this is the discovery phase, and it will be determined by the key stakeholders. Again, remember we said you would also facilitate and help to articulate the future state. You need to be able to encourage stakeholders to define the ideal state as if there were no limitations on technology or resources. A lot of times when you're talking to stakeholders, because they already know the limitations of the current systems, they wouldn't really have or keep an open mind. So if I were to use that statement, dare to dream, they wouldn't want to dream or wish, that would have been nice, but no. We don't even have the technical know-how or the capability, or the resources to make that work. But you want to encourage them to define the ideal state as if, almost like, let's assume everything worked according to plan, and you had everything that you needed at your disposal. How would you want things to be? That's the kind of question. And then depending on the nature of the discovery phase, you could employ a number of different techniques or models. So, you've got different tools that you can use to analyze your current state or your ideal future state. So there's the value stream map, root cause analysis, fishbone diagram, 5 whys. There are loads of ones. We would probably talk about one or two. Yeah, so you might want to read up on these ones, but I would say that there are a host of different techniques you can use, but you can still choose to keep everything simple. And I will show you, I will be more specific in the next couple of slides. Yeah. So there are simple ones you can use to do like an analysis to get the same information. So don't be too hung up on all the big name ones. Okay, you can use a simple model that works for you. I'm sure at this point you already have realized that while doing your duties or your job as a BA, in your role as a BA, really, when you go online or when you consult different resources, you would come up with different things. So if you're talking about templates, you might see 100 different types of templates, but it is all what you make of it. So you want to go for the simplest template and the most effective one. If you have the free hand to do so, or sometimes you might find yourself in an organization where they already have existing templates, makes your work easier. You can just go for it. If they don't have existing templates, you can then get one that works for you. Sometimes you might even adapt a template to suit yourself. So the important thing is presenting your work in a manner that is easy to understand first for yourself, and that captures all the information that you want, and it's easy to understand by somebody else that's referring to that documentation. Okay, so you want to document the current and future state with the same process to simplify a comparison of the two. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're able to make that like for like comparison. Okay. Step 4 says identify the gap by comparing. Okay, so I think I've got 5 steps here. Step 4 says identify the gap by comparing the current versus ideal state. So you've already said this is what I have. You've already identified this is what I would like to have. Then you want to identify the things that you don't have. So it says the capabilities or functions in the desired future state that don't already exist in the current state. So you're like, okay, I don't know why I keep getting drawn to this electric car. Because it's a difficult one for me to even give an example. So yeah, okay, I think I know one example I can use for the electric car. So you can say you already know your current and your ideal state. So what's the gap really? What's the difference between a car that uses fuel and a car that uses that's an electric car? I think one of it is it the battery, or what is missing from? There's something that's not the engine, I think. Please, is there any guy there? Please confirm for me. This is really important. Is it the engine that's missing that's why you've got lots of space like in electric cars? Is there anybody that can?
It uses batteries. The electric one uses batteries now, so
Yeah.
you've got less engine space. So you
Thank you.
borrow.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, so I was right. Okay. So the whole point, what I'm trying to establish really is that you want to identify the functionalities or the features, in your desired future state that do not exist in your current state. So for example, the engine, obviously you have more engine space, and yeah, you won't have that engine. It will be a battery instead, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so this will also help you form a list of items which will be categorized, so they're categorized into like resources, organizational structure, functions, and technology. So you'll be identifying what are the resources that are not in the current state that need to be in existence for us to achieve that ideal state. What is the organizational structure? Do we need to make it a flatter organizational structure, or what do we need to change? Do we need to reduce the number of staff or employ more people? Are there new functions that we might need to consider, new departments and technology? Do we need like a bespoke solution, or do we want like an adaptation of that, so like to kind of improve on what we have and make it more fit for purpose? So these will form your stakeholder requirements and your user stories. Okay, so yeah, identify the gap by comparing the current versus ideal state. So for example, how far from the target was actual production? Okay, so you had already agreed that by the end of Q1, your target was maybe 25% increase in profit margin, and now you have like a 17% increase in profit margin. So you already know the difference in that. So how far from the target was the actual is the actual stage? Okay, and the fifth one here says create and implement a plan to bridge the gap. So again, if you remember that, so this is where the action point comes. Remember that we said that the whole exercise is pointless if you don't have an action plan to go by on, so you want to create that plan. You've identified the gap, you've identified what needs to be done. No, this is the point where you identify or state the activities that need to happen so that there can be that transition from the current state to the future desired state. And you also have to put a mechanism in place that would help you bring that to life. And that's why we said the gap analysis can help you, scope out business requirements. So you now know that, okay, we need to, for example, we need to automate the process. So that might be your epic. Remember, you have epics, your features, your user stories, also known as product backlog items on your Azure board. Okay, so those might form part of like your epics, like, oh, we need to automate the whole system. And then you break it down to say, in order to automate it, we need this, and that. And then you break those features down, to user stories. So you see how your gap analysis can be very important, in your discovery phase, identifying the problems and how to go about, like solving them. So coming up with solutions. Okay, so right. So remember how I said that there are a number of techniques that you can use, and we're talking about I don't know if I mentioned fishbone and all that. Yeah, so there are some techniques that you can use. And what does this mean? It just means techniques that you can use to analyze the system or the process. Okay, so you know how we're saying you want to understand your current state, but shadowing is just one means. We said review documentation, there are other techniques that you can also employ. For example, your SWOT analysis, we know that refers to your strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So you want to look at the current state and say, what are the positives? What are the things that are working well? So you can add these questions to the existing questions of what, where, why, or you can use those what, where, why, and slot them in here. These are different ways you can, get answers and better understand the system or the process or the product. So your SWOT analysis, what are the strengths? So what's really good here? Like what's working perfectly? What are the things that you wouldn't change? The weaknesses, or what are the flaws in the system, or what can we, like improve? Opportunities, like, okay, so are you breaking into new markets, or is there new technology that we can buy into, or is there something that we have that other people don't have but we've not explored? So that's an opportunity. What are the threats? Like, okay, so if we need to rely on what would I say now, for example? Let me go off and use an example to say, maybe if to produce this thing, we need to rely on coal, for example, and assuming coal is a mineral resource that is depleting, that would be a threat, isn't it? So that's just an example on the side. Okay, there's the pestle one, where you consider you give political considerations, your environment, social aspects, technology, economic, and legal. So you want to know this thing that we're embarking on, this process, or this are there legal frameworks? Are there regulatory frameworks that we need to refer to? What are the policies? I know these things change. What does HMRC say about this? Everything keeps changing, and the law, the tax laws, and everything. Economic. Like, so how much money would it cost? What's the the cost of producing this thing? So financial considerations and things like that. Social considerations, like is it ethically right? Like, so a lot of companies talk about their corporate social responsibility. So are we going to be some people even go as far as saying, you see, like when you see some adverts online, you see people asking like, oh, do you do animal, do you test on animals and all that, like they are trying to be sure that the business is going along ethical lines, that especially when it consider so individuals have different things that they consider ethical, so like, oh, I don't want to wear for something, or I don't want to buy any product that has been tested on animals because I don't like animal cruelty and all that, so these are social considerations like ethics, giving back to the society and all that, environment, political. Yeah, your political climate is very important. We know how like things happen abroad can affect us, like how the war in Ukraine and all that between Ukraine and Russia has been driving prices of petroleum product up and all that. So yeah, these are some considerations, when you're making your analysis. There's the McKinsey's 7S strategy, structure, system, shared value, skills, style, and staff. Then you can have brainstorming sessions, like you can meet with the subject matter experts, the stakeholders, have sessions where you just really dig in, but you have to come ready, you have to come ready with questions, those sessions can be very useful, but then you need a firm grasp of how you want the discussions to go. Okay, and then you can do risk analysis. So these are different ways. So even as simple as that's what analysis sounds, it can be very helpful in trying to gather information. Okay, so time is 9:04, not too bad. I would take a few questions before we then go to the practical side of things. Okay, so let's open up for questions now. Do we have any questions? I would stop sharing so I can see if there are hands up, because at the moment I can't see. Okay. All right, so do we have any questions?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
So, thank you for today's lecture. My question is about survey. Could survey be one of a technique one could use to gather the gap analysis in any organization?
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
no worries. So what you mean is if you can use survey to gather information when you are carrying out your gap analysis, right? Yeah. You are right. Yes, a survey can be used. I mean, you can employ any method you can think of to gather information. Some people do surveys, like customer surveys, that might give you a good feel as to what customers value. Think about it. We always want to create solutions that are customer friendly, and as a business analyst, you also want to always have the customer in mind at the center of everything that you are doing. So yeah, if you use surveys, it can give you a feel as to, okay, the things that customers value. You can put your open-ended questions or your closed-ended ones, and a mix of those to kind of give you a really good feel as to what you should be focusing on. Okay. Muhammad Bello Mahmoud, your hand is up. Yep, go for it. Muhammad, I'm not sure okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
I just want to check with you. At what point of the requirement elicitation can we conduct a gap analysis?
Okay, so when you say at what point of requirements elicitation, so it depends on the kind of product and project you are working on, really. So you know how like some projects are called like greenbelt projects, where it's a brand new field, and you'll be doing a lot of research and discovery work in that discovery phase. So let's think about it. If you've been assigned to a project and there is an existing system, okay, before you can even write a user story, you first have to understand the process. So this is where your requirement elicitation can even form part of your gap analysis, and it can also be what's the word now, and vice versa, really. So your requirement elicitation, remember, there's nothing that says your requirement elicitation is like a one and done thing. Okay, so your requirement elicitation process is simply you going to ask questions and trying to figure out what the requirements are. So you might call that, so your requirement elicitation can be a broad umbrella where your gap analysis is under. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. So in the process of requirement elicitation, you might have to do a gap analysis. Let me give you a simple example. So when at my workplace, like if you're writing a user story, you would always have, because we use Jira, right? So you will have where they say problem statement, and then there's the bit where they say is it benefit or business value? Yeah. So under the user story, right? And we use Jira. So under the user story, there's a field that says problem statement. There's another field that says business value. For you, that means you've identified, a pain point, right? So why I'm using this as an example is to show you that gap analysis, it might be called a big name, but you might actually be doing it every day. And that's why I use different examples, like when you're doing your review, your 6-monthly review or your yearly review, you're doing a form of it anyway. Anything that has to do with you comparing existing and desired and identifying what needs to be done, that's a form of gap analysis. Okay, so like I was saying, when we're writing user stories, we then put the problem statement, and then we now put the business value. The problem statement will be telling you of the current state. You say currently this, and customers are blah, 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 blah. It's taking them long to do blah, 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 blah. And then the business value will now be, when it's implemented, this process, the processing time will be reduced by half, that kind of thing. So in a sense, before you were able to get that requirement, you've done a little gap analysis. So it was nothing really extensive, but you've done it. But, so it can be applied to different things, and the level of granular, I'm trying to speak grammar, granularity, right, can be different, meaning that it might be applied to a really big project, or it might be applied to something really simple and straightforward. So yeah, you can say that. You remember how we said that your gap analysis can form a basis for your requirements and gathering process or your business requirement. So they are both intertwined. So you can say your gap analysis can come under your requirements elicitation process. Does that answer your question, Mohammed?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions before we go to the practical side of things? Right, I can't see any hands up, so I'm assuming we are ready, guns blazing, to answer the questions that to kind of engage, not kind of, I would like us to engage when we go to the next slide. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to be sharing this. Just bear with me 1 second while I switch screens. Okay. All right. So we're going to, okay, I still need to share that screen so that we know what we're doing, and then I would tell us. Yeah, okay. All right, so we were here. We talked about the techniques, and yeah, so we're going to do practical. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to analyze a claim processing system using the SWOT technique to identify possible gaps and areas for improvement, and then we'll come up with possible suggestions that might help close the gap. So I have, hello. Somebody has unmuted. Can we be sure to mute? Okay, so I created, so I've just taken the liberty and created a scenario, right? A claim processing scenario. I personally created it so that it will be simple enough for us to analyze, and we're going to use SWOT. So SWOT might not be the only thing we use. We just use a variety of, so we've discussed the kind of questions we should be asking to identify, like what could be wrong, and then most importantly, come up with possible suggestions that might help close the gap. So what will happen is I have put the answer somewhere else. I've put the answer somewhere else, but I will let us have a go, so that we can all have that shared understanding of what we're trying to do here today. Okay, so I'm going to share my Excel spreadsheet. Again, I'm using the Excel spreadsheet so that you can see that a lot of these things don't have to be fancy. A lot of these things we end up on Excel spreadsheets. Like I said, if you go to if you're in an organization where they already have templates, that's all well and good. But a lot of times, if there are no templates, you end up using your Excel. Excel is like your reliable and friendly tool. Okay, so we said we're analyzing what a customer claims process, right? Okay, so I've gone ahead and, let's assume I've already done the work in terms of like trying to establish the current state. So we're going to read through together. And as we're reading through, you might start seeing things that are not working well or are just like pointless, I mean, you want to review the current state. You want to ask those questions. Remember the questions we said, what, when, how, why, like, do we need to do this? Who is responsible for this? So I'm not going to give too much away. I'll just stop talking about that now. So as we're reading through, just have a proper think of the way it's working. And then I want us to be able to drive the future state. So you see, I'm going to scroll to the very end so that you see that I've got the area here. So remember how we said you want to identify the area. So it's the customer claims department, or there's a process that we're trying to analyze. Is the payment, the claims processing. I don't know how to put it, the customer claims processing. That's what we're trying to, analyze for any issues in the current state. Then we want to check to see what the desired state should be, which is the future state. Please let me know if you can still see my screen. And then we want to identify the gap and then come up with an action plan. So this is really straightforward. I mean, this is a simple layout, really. And as far as you're able to capture and document everything that you need to, you're fine. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be like a fancy thing. Most times you will end up using Excel. Okay, so let's go for it now. Right, so the first thing, it says what? Customers. I just want us to pay attention, so that, because at some point I'm going to be asking us, so we'll have to complete the other bits together. I've done this for us. Okay, so the customer sends in the claims via post or email, right? Postal claims are sorted at the mail room, and the claims that have been sorted are hand delivered to the claims department. So remember we said you can either have the claims via post or email. So the ones that come in via post, the mailman will sort them in the mail department or mail room, and then hand deliver them to claim department. Then the ones that come via email, obviously they'll be received directly into the claims mailbox. Okay. The claims officer checks the claims mailbox and then allocates the work. Now, the business standard is that claims are to be dealt with within 5 to 7 working days from the date they are received. So the process continues. So that was just a business requirement, right? As in terms of the time frame or deadlines. The claim officer logs the claim onto the claim system for review, and then he contacts payment support team to verify the claim on their payment system. Payment support team sends the result of their check, whether it's a valid or invalid claim. So they will check. If it's a valid claim, they will let the claims officer know. If it's invalid, they will also let the claim officer know. Now, let's start with the valid ones. If it's a valid claim, and it's beyond a certain amount, then the claim officer will have to send that approval will send the claim on to the senior claims officer via email to approve. So you know how some businesses have like limits. You cannot approve any claim beyond maybe £500. If it's 510, you have to send it to you, or your senior manager or something. Okay, so that's what that means. Now the senior claims officer reviews the claim, and at that point, if there's further clarification required, it's rejected by the senior claims officer. Okay, now, so let's go back here. You see where they say valid or invalid claim. So we've done the valid claim scenario, right? So if it's an invalid claim, then they will still email the claims officer to say that is invalid, right? So for all rejected claims, a message is sent by email or post, depending on the initial mode of delivery. So what that means is that if, as a customer, you sent in your claim via post, if it's now discovered that that claim is invalid or it's been rejected, the message, the rejection message or whatever is inside that letter will be sent to you via post. However, if you send it via email, then an email with your the rejection message will be sent back. So it depends on the initial mode of delivery. Approved claims are sent via email to the payment support team to then initiate payment. And the average time taken for customers to receive payment is 10 to 12 working days. So I'm going to leave that on the screen, and let me try to go a bit to the side so that we can see both, and then we can start. I just felt it would be good to do a group exercise just to drive home the point. Okay, so right. Okay, so we can see all that. Right. So can we start looking at this? So like I said, I've got my answers here in the future state, gap and action, but I will let us have a go. And it might very well turn out that you have more answers than I have written, because yeah, I only did this today actually. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so I think I can give us the future state so that we can identify the gap. I think I can give us the future state so that we make this exercise shorter. Okay, so I'm just gonna take that out here. I'll do the future state so that we can go straight and identify the gaps. All right, so if you think that you've seen something that is wrong, at least one thing that's wrong with that system, can you share? You can unmute yourself and just share. Once you have unmute yourself, you can go ahead and share, because I can't see any names because I'm sharing my screen. You know what? Give me a second. My battery is running down. 1 second, please. Okay, so I think I've given us some time to actually look at this. So, like I said, you can unmute and share. I can't see the hands being raised up. So,
Hello, hello, good evening.
good evening.
I think. Wait, go on.
Yeah, my name is Leko.
Okay, hi.
Yeah. Well, if I'm to work on this particular process flow, I will want to see a situation where we reduce the handling part. Yes, we can do two things.
Okay.
Instead of us having the claim officer having to log this on the system, we can create a single system for the customer themselves to select the type of complaint that they have, so that when they put this on the system, sending email, excuse me, some claims might get mixed up in the email, some sending claim through post as well. There will definitely be human error, classification, delay, strike, and what have you. Okay. So if we create a portal that will be accessible by
This
the customer.
Lekon, please wait first. You want to answer the whole. Okay, let me. You are right. You're on track. As in, but I'm stopping you because you're actually going to
too
the
much.
action plan. Do you get what I mean?
Okay, let's
So-
pause for now.
no,
Okay.
no. Stay where you are. I just want to get. I want you to identify the gaps, okay? Because you've already identified the gaps, right? But you are not listing them. It's like you are going straight to the. It's like you're even spying from my notes. So, but what I want you to do, right? What I want us to do is, while as you were talking, I was already getting some points, but I want you to identify those gaps. So you've already started giving the action plan, right? But before that, and that is really spot on, I must say, that is, you've already started identifying things, but I want us to go one by one. So you mentioned human error, isn't it? The
Yes,
possibility of human error. Okay, so that's one thing. So you see what we're trying to do, like identify those things. There was something. What else did you? So I'll let you think now and
Okay.
give me maybe one more, and then I'll let somebody. Yeah. So
Okay, the second might be external factors.
such as
like your post office, issues with environmental factor that is related to post office and whatever. If you are
Mhm.
Or
doing,
maybe train strike and all of that. The
Yeah.
person might not be able to.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let me give
Okay.
others.
Thank you very much, Lekon. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? You can mute and unmute and let's go for it. Who wants to give it a shot? So what? Let me go back there. Maybe I should even delete this future state because we've already seen it, right? I'll delete it so that we can just see the gap thingy. So that, I mean, in terms of navigation. Okay, so right, let's go back. Please, I don't want silence, so let's try and
We're raising
think
our
about.
hands.
Oh, sorry, you know
We
what?
can't see.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, because I'm using one. Apologies. I'm using one screen today, which was quite lazy of me. But yeah. So okay, you know what I can do? Can I get somebody please to help me with the with checking the hands and and just so that it's orderly, so that we're not talking over each other. Can somebody volunteer, please?
We'll help you do that.
Sorry, who's that, please?
Zinkechi.
Okay, thank you. So so there was somebody that said they were raising their hands. Can you?
Yeah, it was.
Yes, I'll tell
Okay.
you.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it, please.
So I was actually going to add that the process of having the flow I saw first was the claims officer. Do I have to do step by step, or can we just pick from anywhere in between?
Just pick from anywhere. Yeah,
Okay,
it doesn't have
yeah,
to be in order.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Right. So the
Yeah.
process of having the claims officer to forward it onto the system and then having a mail room as well, that can be combined into one process. There's a flaw there already, and that would not only, I mean, going back to SWOT analysis, that's a
Yeah.
weakness.
Okay, so what's
That's
the
a
weakness? What's the weakness? Because you've kind of like, but I want you to say it. So what's the weakness?
It's the duration, the time that we're going to be losing there.
Okay, so that's one, but there was something that you said, because you said it can be combined into one process.
Yeah,
but
it can be
being combined,
into-
that's like your solution, isn't it? So what's the problem? Do you get
that's
what I
an
mean?
opportunity. That's an opportunity.
Yeah, that's an opportunity. Yeah, but I want
Yeah.
us to first come from the weaknesses in the system.
The
So you've
weakness.
already identified it, but I want you to say, do you get what I mean? So you've said, okay, let me just say what it is. So you're saying that it's almost like there's kind of duplication or unnecessary task, isn't it? Like,
Yes, that's right.
yeah,
Duplication,
yeah.
that's what I was looking for, actually.
Is
Yeah.
that how they spell
Duplicated
unnecessary?
process.
Unnecessary.
Can
Is that how they spell it? I don't know. No,
Yeah.
it's one N.
One
It's
N,
one N and two
E,
E.
one
eh,
C, double S.
Two S.
One C, double S.
Okay. Why does that look okay? All right. I'm taking your word for it. Okay, so unnecessary task, isn't it? Yeah, or
Yes.
steps in the process.
Yes. And
So I just want us to keep thinking in terms of like the weaknesses, right? So
Yeah.
I know that it's so easy for us to say this is the solution, this is, but before you do that, you want to identify. Remember, I said that when I'm doing the user stories, I have to write what the problem statement and then the business value. So you always want to say, because when you write the problem statement, you can now show how you're adding value to the business. And a lot of times, this is where you can defend the decisions that you are making. Okay, so thank you for that. So that was unnecessary tasks or steps in the process. Did you have any other one you wanted to say, or is there any other person's hand up?
I'll give other people for question.
Okay.
Okay, Mohammed.
Mohammed.
Yeah, to me, I think like that 7 days, 5 to 7 days is too long. So maybe there's a way to short the whole, like, it's not, it's too much of a time just for a claim to be processed.
Okay. So, but what do you think is making it 5 to 7 days? Okay, yeah. So let's even put that on its own. That in itself, it's a problem, isn't it? So let's first do that.
Yeah.
Time taken to complete the process is too long. Okay. So what do you think is causing this making the time long?
I think it's more of like, the whole process, like just like what they have mentioned, the delay factor, the unnecessary task.
And steps in the process, isn't it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add to that?
The unnecessary is not spelled right.
You see, somebody has misled me. Oh my goodness.
Double N.
Double N.
Yeah.
And so is that correct now? It doesn't look correct in my eyes. Is that correct?
No, it's not.
Ha. Please Google it.
It's not double N. Double N.
How can it be double N?
No.
That doesn't look
definitely right. Double N.
Oh my
it's
God.
definitely double N.
UNNESSAR unnecessary.
Double
N hyphen.
Double
You
N.
put a hyphen.
Double N.
Okay, so
you can put an hyphen if you want.
You put a hyphen after the first
Let's
N,
Google that so
sense.
we can move
Please
on.
Google it to
You
gap
don't
analysis.
even need an hyphen.
Don't need any hyphen. It's double.
Because necessary is a word on its own. Then
on. You never see that in English.
It's double N.
Is
it necessary?
Okay. All right, that's fine. Thank you, everybody. We've just done gap analysis on unnecessary. Okay, thank you. Okay, so right. That was funny.
I think that Adeumi was about to say something.
Okay, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to add to what Mohammed just said about taking too long in the process. I think what could be added to that in terms of the long duration as well is I forgot what I was going to say now. We've been fighting about
because of this unnecessary.
Yeah, because I'll remember. Never mind. I'll remember.
That's fine. Okay, if anyone else thinks.
Ginika.
Okay, Ginika, go for it.
All right, thank you so much for the lecture. Well, I think one of the gap analysis, the problem I recognize is cost.
Okay.
Cost of sending postal stuff. Okay. People would, prefer to, because, there are different level of cost. You want it as quick as possible. You pay this amount and all of that. So I think cost,
And that isn't that because you're saying there's a timeline, so you want when you're sending, you probably be doing what they call it, priority made or something. Yeah. Okay. Yes, all right. Thank you. Exactly. Any other?
Adiola.
Okay.
Adiola.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm sorry, you might hear my daughter's voice. So
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So in terms of, I'm taking it from the beginning, though.
Yeah. That's
so
fine.
In terms of the manpower and labor, you get to reduce staff because I'm looking at it from the angle of if you break these processes in between in terms of taking longer and everything, where emailers will be hand delivered to claim department and all of that. So you might actually be reducing money that you're going to be paying on salaries.
Okay, so let me ask you the question.
Basically, manpower.
So what you've done just now, so is that a problem or a solution to what? Which one is it?
It's a problem. Your overhead on salaries is going to be too much.
Okay. So what you're trying to say is that it's dependent on labor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you get what I'm trying to do now, because a lot of times we're thinking about it in terms of like the solutions, but I want us to also, which means the solutions will be quite straightforward for us to get.
Yeah.
But I also want us to identify, because until you identify the problem, you can't really say how you're adding value to the business. So when you now say it's dependent on labor and that drives your overhead costs, which so if I were to write it now in business balance, I would say dependent on labor, which then drives up,
your overhead.
Overhead. Yeah. So okay. I make it look really important. Yeah. Okay, so any more hands up?
Muhammad, is that a legacy hand or is it a new hand?
Sorry, it's not a new hand, so I already just
that's fine. Olubukola.
So I was just going to say that the last person that spoke and talked about cost of postage is just to understand also that say for the elderly people, they would rather do postage than email.
Yes.
Likewise, maybe the younger generation, they would prefer.
Yeah, I've gone ahead. In fact, you are spying my book. You've gone ahead. So, okay. So where you're addressing now, you're coming up with an action plan to mitigate. Like, so for example, if we're saying, okay, just hold that thought, because that's like further down the line. But you are right in saying that when we're considering cost of postage, elderly people, we know that they would rather have the mail person, deliver stuff to them, directly to them. Imagine even our parents, like how many of them are on like social media and all that, like, and I remember when I got a phone from my dad, this was years ago, and we thought we were doing him a favor, and he still ended up writing all the names and contacts on his address book, so they're quite reluctant to change, and the technology and the way we adapt to change is different for older people. So it might be more convenient for them to, use depend or rely on postage. However, it's something worth considering. Like, okay, are there ways we can, speed delivery? So yeah, it is an area to consider. So we're going to look at that when we come to the action plan. But that's thank you for that, well spotted. Yeah, so this shows you that when you are identifying your gaps, you can be seeing the pros and cons, right? So you're saying cost of postage, but it might be that you might see it as a gap or a weakness, but a necessary, let me use the word evil. You get what I mean? You know what I mean? Like necessary in the sense that it might be a cost that you have to incur. Maybe the only thing you can do is to reduce the cost and not maybe completely eradicate postage. Okay, so thank you for that. Any other hands up, please?
They on me.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. I just remember, I think that will probably be classified as a duplication as well, because I was looking at the claims department. There's an officer that has to put the claims on the system, then it goes back to the payments department to make it valid. I mean, again, that's another form of duplication where we could save a lot of time and resources, because the same person could do. I mean, that could all be put into one process.
Yeah.
The same person could do that. So it's duplication of tasks. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, another one I spotted there as well was when the claims are rejected, when the message is sent, depending on the mode of
delivery,
the initial claim was made. Why I think that's more a solution than a problem. But the problem I saw there was, while they're making the claim, they could always, you know, they can put a self-addressed envelope back, which could assist for elderly people. I was thinking of as well.
Yeah.
That will help, and that will speed up the process of them receiving it. So that's probably more like an action plan.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. So thank you, everyone. Do we still have any hands up so that I can just show you what I wrote down?
You've got a few more hands up.
Okay. So help me call the names so that we just I'll just call all the names.
That's fine. I'll start with myself. I was going to say that your last point, I think the mode of payment, there's a gap on the mode of payment for it to take 10 to 12 working days.
Okay, so you want to consider like the mode of payment, as in the whole process is quite long. Okay.
And the wait period to receive payment.
Okay, so again, that's tied into
to the mode of payment. So we've got Jose Mena.
Okay.
No, what I wanted to say in terms of duplication of the tax was in terms of there's a bit of bureaucracy in the whole system. So we need to find a way to reduce.
How will I spell this one again? Okay, that's correct. I know that one's correct. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the bureaucracy. Okay.
Olayemi. Olayemi, over to you. Okay. If the person is not there, Ruti for real.
Hi. So it's with regards to the payment as well.
Okay.
So I think the process of payment is kind of the flow is delayed.
Okay.
Someone has mentioned that before, but I think
you are being specific about the flow, isn't it?
Yes, the flow.
Okay. Right. Okay, thanks for that. Any other hands up?
Jenica, is this previous hand or just a new hand?
The new hand.
Okay.
With regards to the email, I think mails might be skipped because some may go to spam and maybe mail backlog that may not be captured immediately.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So even if I'm to add to that one, like, is there somebody even monitoring the mailbox?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I also say that the risk management involved, in all of this might be a gap as well?
Okay, can you explain? So you said the risk management.
I'm trying to say all of these postals, being sent, and then the email as well. So sometimes you might be exposing their details, unnecessarily. Take, for instance, something happens, someone else gets the postal being sent to a wrong address, thereby exposing the person's details.
What they call that in data
protection.
GDPR.
Data protection breach or something.
GDPR.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So let's make that a complete sentence to say possible, because it doesn't mean that it must happen, but yeah, that's a possibility. There's a risk there. Okay. Do we still have any more hands so that I can?
Atiola.
Okay. So how many hands are up just now?
I think just to Jenica, is it a new one for you?
Yes, sorry. It's with regards to the risks that she mentioned. I want to consider with regards to that senior claim officer determining which maybe it's valid. What system have they put in place to determine that? That's what I'm thinking.
Okay,
is that a gap?
Oh yeah, that can be a gap. So how will we write that one now? So what you're saying now, is it like, yes? So is it like a subjective decision, like, or
exactly,
are there parameters to say there's something that they're referring to, you know? So
to approve it, yeah.
So authorization decision, no, that's even is that for the authorization or even checking that? Because we're saying that if there are any, okay, let's just say parameters. Parameters to check the validity of the claim. So that is more like a question, really, as in you want to really check it, as in is there something in place? If not, then it's a weakness. Check validity of claims. Okay, thank you.
Adiola.
Hi everyone. So I'm looking at it from the point of the customer, from the angle of the customer now. So is the customer able to wait? Like the wait period is 10 to 12 working days, still tied to time. Will the customer still be interested in the goods and services being provided by the company? Do you understand? We don't want to go out the customer. So okay, so maybe when we get to action plan, I might be able to continue that. So the customer, if they are not able to wait, what processes are in place for them so that they are able to get what they have paid for? And some customers might not actually want a repayment. They want the service.
Oh, no. So let me explain this one. This one is like, it's a claim, like processing. Yeah, let's just assume that
you have possibility of losing the customer if
yeah,
or they lose interest in the service
because of the time taken
to
process it. Okay.
So losing customers due to long lead time.
Yeah, due to what?
Long lead time.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Is that the last hand, or do we have anybody else?
Ruti for real, is it the new one? Ruti. Okay. That's the last person.
Okay, thank you. So let me go to our what's this? Future state. Okay, so I have my gap now. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and then we'll see if there are any new ones from mine, because I think we've pretty much okay, so I have duplication of tasks here, so that's fine. We've said that one. Too much back and forth movement between departments. So that's also like the unnecessary tasks or steps in the process, or even the bureaucracy. Okay, and then that results in delay as well. So time taken to complete the process. Possibility of postal mail getting lost in the system. I think did we say that? Yeah, we said some factors, external factors and stuff like that, isn't it? Delays from so that can go under that one. Delay in processing time for postal claims. So as you can already see, it will take longer for postal claims to be processed, because they will first of all send the claims in by post. Then the mail person will sort it and then take it up. What if the post arrives late that day, they don't sort it that day, they do it the next day, then now take it upstairs, and then you now find out that there's an error, it's not valid. You then put it by post again, send it. I mean, it's a long and winded process. Okay, so again, I think we mentioned this one as well, that is labor. It's dependent on labor, which drives up overhead. So the same thing. So I think I'll just say, yeah, it's labor intensive and heavily manual. So maybe I should leave that one and just add it here. Add it here. Okay, so we've pretty much covered. I don't think this is a comprehensive list, but I mean, for half an hour, for an exercise of half an hour, I think we have done really well. Yeah, so these are the things that we've identified. Okay, so what would we then say would be the solutions? So I know that a lot of us were already coming up with solutions once we were into it. Okay, so how do I not lose that bit? Okay, so we can start. Let's have another go. So we had so many examples like coming through in terms of like the action plans and things to the solution to fix these things. So can we now unmute or put up your hands and then you can share with the group what you think the possible solutions could be. So before I forget the one on okay, yeah, so let me leave you open. Can we put our hands up and then share what we think based on these problems, like the gaps that we've identified? What do we think we
Adewumi.
Yeah, thanks. Possibility of human error, I think straight away that can be automated depending on the budget.
Okay.
I think automation will be a good way of getting rid of a lot of the problems, not lost human error as well.
So when we're giving thank you for that. So when we're giving our answers, right? Don't bother about the order. So it doesn't mean that if we say external factors, then the action plan must be that. Do you get what I mean? Let's just anyone that you feel you can come up with. Yeah, let's say. So yeah, if we automate the system, and that should help us in terms of cutting down human error. Okay, so what did I do? Okay, right. So anyone else?
Olubukola.
So I was going to say, probably the labor intensive one, right? A lot of manual processes. So instead of having to make the claim go through all kinds of processes, could it be detected at the early stage of the claim being received, whether it's to be approved of or to be rejected, instead of having to be rejected at a very, later time?
Okay, so that's having like a mechanism to detect the validity of the claim, but
earlier on rather than I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, it does. Early, so early on in the process.
Yeah. Possibly when it's just been received, so it doesn't have to go through all that process. Then at the end, you now find out that you need to reject it.
Yeah, it really is at the tail end because you log it in, you do this, go back, and then eventually there's a possibility that it will be failed, and then days would have passed or something, and then you reject it and start all. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Osaemena.
So my suggestion in this is trying to streamline the procedures. So in terms of bringing a policy that will that could reduce the number of steps involved.
Yeah.
Removing unnecessary, like all these unnecessary approvals and going back and try to standardize the whole process into one single.
It's shorter, as in, because I'm sure if we were to put this thing into like a process map, it would just be going up and down, left, right, center.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something that's more straightforward. As in, why is it that you first of all, and when you log it, then you send it to payment people, they check if it's valid, it comes back to you. When you've done your own check, you now take it back to them again for payment.
Exactly.
It is a bit,
and then another one is like, I think like somebody has said that the automating the process.
Yeah.
To reduce the amount of like the manual work that has to be done.
Yes.
That will speed up the process.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Any other hands up?
Me. Adewumi.
Yeah, I was going to say for the payment flow, There's a possibility of employee service of a third-party organization. Because as you know, there are different kinds of payments. There's PayPal, there's credit card, there's debit cards, there's instrumental payments, there's vouchers and all that. So to make the process a lot more faster, if we employ the service of a third-party financial organization that would, just enhance the payment process for them. So that's taken out of them. So that would give them an overall shorter period of dealing with other tasks, while the third-party organization handles all the payment process for them.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yanika.
With regards to missing email, in fact, most of the thing is having a structured system or introduce either a portal or a blog that covers that part of sending the inquiry.
You've actually said something that I was waiting for. So when we said so like a portal, right?
Yeah.
How about monitors? How about a claims portal?
Yeah, exactly. Claims portal that monitors inquiry, have a system that also
everything
checks
is
the
in
validity.
there.
So many things, covers so many things.
Yeah, so that ties into the automation as well. So if you want to automate it, then you just have a platform where you log in, you have your login details, just like how you have is it .gov? I'm trying to think of somewhere. Yeah, you have everything in there. You have your password, your you have a username and your password. You log in, everything is on there. You go there, you put your you have it, so it's streamlined. You see everything is coming together. You put in your details and you click submit.
And you can also have a box ticked for this privacy thing. Terms and condition of confidentiality checkbox. Yes.
Yeah. So like portal with data protection. What will we say now?
Portal with data with GDPR facility.
GDPR features.
Compliance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Then there was another thing that was mentioned about the cost of postage. We might want to consider if this is if some postage costs would be unavoidable. So when you're preferring solutions, you sometimes you might not just throw so unavoidable, e.g. or the for sorry,
first class
self-addressed envelope. So when I put in the claims, you can just put a self-addressed envelope there. So instead
you mean like when you say self-addressed, so when they're sending in the claims.
Yeah. So say for the elderly people or for people who are not that tech savvy, if they're sending their claims in, they could put an extra envelope with their address on there and a post, and a stamp. I beg your pardon. So when they process their claim, the result, whether it's valid or not valid, they just put it back in that envelope and send it back to them. So thereby the company is not incurring the cost of posting back to them. So the client has already
incur that this thing. So you also want to okay. So that will come under here. So let's say associated postage cost. So so what you've said now, right? You see how we have this as an action plan. So we're talking about postage costs, and we are coming up with different solutions. As these action plans are here, they are not standalone solutions, if you get what I mean. Some of them we form like epics, that will not have to go and break down. So for example, this postage cost, you might not want to say, okay, they will want to put start a process with self-addressed envelopes, or are we just going to agree that it is a cost that the business will incur? However, if we combine it with automation, right, and having a claims portal, we can drive down the number of postal claims, because we now know that we'll be targeting the elderly and the people that need assistance, that are not tech savvy, right? So, but if we are encouraging people to use the claims portal, some people like all the Gen Zs and all the they will find it easier to just even go on a portal and do everything. So that way we've driven the cost, the associated postage cost down, but we've also factored in the fact that we might not be able to totally eradicate postage cost because elderly people, there's some people out of habit, they just want to keep sending, they're comfortable sending paper copy of everything, you know. So yeah, so that's something. So these things that we put here, they will not take them away and now start discussing them with our teams and everything, and start saying, okay, so what is the best way forward? But at the very least, you come away from this exercise having an action plan that you can build upon. Okay, so are there any other hands up?
Yes, sir. We have
okay.
plenty.
Okay. Can you do me a favor and just call the names one after the other so that they go in that order, and I know how many hands to explain.
We still got 5 hands. Isaac.
Okay.
Isaac. Can I go on?
Okay, yes, please.
Isaac, yeah.
Okay, all right, fine. So I was just looking, why are we limiting the way to make claim to 2? Just the email and the postal services. Why can't we incorporate phone calls, social medias like Twitter and the likes? So that will even it will reduce the problem we're having with the timing, you know, and all that. So just looking at then phone calls, social media, and then like live chats, things like that can be incorporated.
Okay, so like live chats, phone calls, yeah. Okay, cool.
Adiola.
Thanks, Isaac.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I was also thinking, I see micromanaging staff, which can ultimately affect their mental health and job satisfaction. Nobody likes to be micromanaged. That's the gap. So I'm thinking that if we can give them more power to be able to do these things independently, and maybe just do a like end of the day reports, which we will do at the end of the day anyway.
Right. Okay. So yeah. Okay.
Okay. Next person, Olayemi.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you very much. On the mode of payment and duration, thinking we can have different modes of payment, not just one.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry, I was.
No problem.
Mode of payment, right?
Mode of payment, yes, that we can have different kind of mode of payment. That's all.
Okay.
So mode of payment.
So,
different kinds of mode.
Different
options.
Or different payment options. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry, who's next?
Yeah, hi. So I was actually going to say something on the posting thing, because for me, I believe the most secure means of like, you know, passing valuable valuable information is via posting. Like for instance, now if you want to get a thing from a bank, they tell you that, oh, sorry, we can't email you.
Yeah.
Or we can, you know, we have to post it over. So
in the post,
I believe posting is one of the most secured means of, you know, passing valuable information. So I still believe we still have to, you know, factor that in, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. So I've just added that here. So we want to consider if some the postage cost will be unavoidable, you know, when we're thinking about maybe the elderly and also for security purposes. Okay, so
yeah.
Monica.
Okay, I have feedback from customers to improve system. I have training for staff to also improve system.
Thank you for that one.
And the last one.
Okay.
The last one with regards to that strike thing. While it could be possible, we can also partner with private, I'll say I'm saying we, as if it's my company. They can also partner with private companies that post. Then you have options. You have options to choose, okay, do you want to go with this or do you want to go with that?
Yeah.
As long as it's standard based on your course. That's just.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's a good one.
Adewumi.
Oh, sorry, that's an old hand. I beg your pardon.
Thanks. Ozemena, is that an old hand as well?
Yeah, old hand, sorry.
Okay. Adiola.
Yeah, so on possibility of losing customers, I think.
So sorry to interrupt. At this point now, I'm not really putting them like for like. I hope we understand that. So I was doing that at the start. No, carry on. I was doing that at the start, but now I'm just filling up the spaces. Okay. Yeah. So carry on, please.
Possibility of losing customers. I think if vouchers can be introduced that they can use at checkout, so that they won't have to wait for the lead time.
Okay. Right. Any more?
Adeoluwa. That's the last person.
Okay. So. Right. So.
Adeoluwa. Adeoluwa. We can't hear you. Okay, you can carry on.
Okay. So so these are the ones that I actually some of the ones that I just like put down, so we can go and see if there are any ones that I didn't note. Okay, so so this one, mailbox, dedicated officer to check the mailbox. That was another thing, because there's a mailbox, but you know how these mailboxes can be, where there's no specific person, and then you send something to a mailbox, a claims processing mailbox. They might not, it's not coming to OK's mailbox, so I don't have responsibility for it. So is there a dedicated person there? Okay, that was just a question that I wanted us to think about. So right, we said automate the claim system and create a claims portal. So we've talked about that. So that was a really good one, because why start the process, pass it on to another thing, come back again, when you can have everything in one place, securely stored, so you have access to it using your username and your password. You go in there, you put in your details, and you just hit submit, and it probably turns up in the claim system, yeah, and it makes it quicker. So you don't have it cuts down the, I'm going to post it, and the mail person is going to sort it and take it upstairs, and they're going to log it in. What if as somebody takes it in and throws it in the bin or something? Do you get? So that will cut that out. And even for the email one, yes, you still have to go into the mailbox, retrieve it, and then log it on. However, if it's on the portal, everything just goes straight there. But please remember that we said that there will still be some unavoidable postage, because you have to think with your customer, the end user, in mind. So there will still be people that would send it via email for different reasons. It might be for security reasons, via post, it might be for security reasons, or because that's how they've always done things. So maybe like the elderly people. There's another one here that we didn't mention. So you notice how it says the claims officer will look at it and send it via email, send the claim via email to the claims the payment support. They will review it and say, okay, it's valid. Send it via email again back. How about both systems start talking to each other, you know, and we integrate the claims and payment system. So if you integrate everything, so you create a portal. On that portal, you put bits of the claim system, or you tie it into the claim system and the payment system, so that when the claim person goes in, does their thing, and click submit, you know. So if the customer puts in their details, hit submit, it turns up in like a work basket. Okay, and then you see how it's making sense now. I'm actually quite impressed with my scenario. And by the way, I created it all by myself. So when they put in their details and hit submit, it turns up in the work basket. The claims officer picks it up, does their own bit, hit submit, it turns up in the other the claims processing thing, you know. So it's making it shorter. It's all happening in one place, you know. Or they can cut off that bit and put in some, you know, like how we said, some mechanisms or parameters in place to just check at the early onset, like, is this a legal? So from that word go, you're carrying those checks out at the very start, not that it gets to the payment point and you're saying, you know what, it's not a valid claim. No, you want it to be done at the start, you know, and it's a smoother process. So how about you consider the possibility of integrating the claims and payment systems? And this is another one, and it ties into the other points made about identifying the detecting the validity of the claims early on in the process. So if you okay, no, well, this is different for authorizations actually. So somebody mentioned, you know, like giving the staff the ownership, right, to make those decisions, not being micromanaged, because it can affect team staff morale. So if we're cutting down all these manual processes, do you not think that if we've automated it, the staff can now be in a position to make to focus on value-added activities, so they cannot make those bigger decisions and approve claims, you understand? So if everything is like already automated, most of the process is automated, then they can actually maybe even be in a position to approve claims. And then or early on, once you just see the value of the claim, you know, create an exception. There will be exception report. And if it's like an automatic one, that the moment the customer submits it, the system has some checks, you know, so for the validity of the claim and for the amount of the claim. So immediately, if it does not meet that, it goes above that threshold, an exception report is created, and that claim goes direct to the let's say the senior claims officer. Do you get? So early on you filtered it, so it's not like you process it, and when it gets to a point, you now take it back, they say it's invalid, or when it comes out and says it's valid, you now realize, oh, the amount is higher than my pay grade, so I need to refer this one to the claims officer. But you can do all that early in the day and save yourself, you know, all the hassle. Now there's something else. When you introduce new systems, you know, there will be some pushback, you know, so you will need to create like a system to support. You need IT support for the new claim system. So you might have, maybe like somebody mentioned, live chats and all those kind of things. Like, you know, people will be calling, I tried to put in my password, it didn't work, and blah blah blah. It's okay, IT. So you put all those like IT support and all that for the new system, because it will take a while for people to, you know, come around, you know, and, you know, accept it, or for it to start working properly. I don't know if we mentioned upskilling. I think we did. Yeah. So that somebody said, yeah, so we can put that here. Upskilling or training of claim officers. So for example, if you were able to do the new claim system and it's automated, that means the roles of the claim officers will change. So you have to do a brand new maybe workshop or upskilling session to show them how to use the system. How about you think about it when you're trying to make a change? You have to communicate to the people, isn't it? To say, oh, planned maintenance or planned something from so from this time to this time. So you have to make people aware. And then the last one I put here. So please, this is not an comprehensive. It's not a comprehensive list. As in, like I said, this is make believe. I actually made up the scenario just so that we can think about it and we can apply what we've learned. Put it to practice. So that was the whole aim. So yeah, you also want to consider existing technology and capability. Like, so do we already have in-house technology that we can adapt to suit this new claim system, or do we have to look for a bespoke one? Or yeah, so those are the considerations. Okay, with our budget, can we afford, to get a bespoke system, or with our budget, can we just make some modifications to the existing one? So yeah, thank you everyone for the contribution.
Okay,
Look at
sorry,
that.
can I,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
can I just jump in? One more thing. I'm not sure if we mentioned it anywhere, but looking at the what, when, where, who. We haven't mentioned who anywhere. Who exactly is going to be driving it? Who is the decision maker? Who's going to discuss the budget as available?
Yeah.
Who's going to,
Yeah. So that's a really good one. Like I said, this is not an extensive list of solutions or the action plan, right? So you want to determine identify who has responsibility. Okay. Responsibility for the project. You want to, so the who as well, what teams will be impacted,
impacted,
or will have to and what teams will be impacted, what systems would interface. You want to say how much, how much
budget
are we budgeting? So everyone, I hope you can see how this simple question he asked has already started bringing more.
How much duration do we have?
So what's the duration, or what's the deadline, right? What's the timeline, or project project timeline or deadline.
How?
Yeah.
How are we looking to employ an external party to fix it, or do we have in-house?
Yeah. So that was why we said consider existing technology and capability. So in-house capability or external resource.
External party.
Yeah. Okay. So
please, my hand is raised.
Okay, please go on.
Okay, so I have two things I feel I should add. Under the automation, now there's this FAQ that can actually resolve some of our issues without.
Okay.
So we can just add FAQ that frequently asked questions. That will resolve most of the claim issues. You know if you're eligible right away from there, so you don't even need to go too far. And then I also observed that it's like we're focusing too much on the service provider. How do we now measure the customer satisfaction at the end of all these processes that we're putting in place? How do we measure that? Okay, we've actually satisfied this customer.
Okay,
I think there should be a measure in place.
Okay, so maybe arrange for a customer survey
kind of feedback
or feedback. Okay, so this will tie into the point that I raised, to say you want to communicate your plans to your customer base. Okay, so you cannot just come up one day and say you've changed the system and everything. You'd have given people notice to say this is what we are proposing to do, and this is how it will make your life easier. And then when you started doing it, maybe 3 months in, you will now send another communication to say, now that you've been using this system for the past for some time now, do you mind taking 5 minutes to do a survey? The survey might even be on the online thingy, like on that portal. you know. So you know how like maybe when you log in, it will just pop up to say, are you happy to complete a 5-minute survey? You know, click here. You know, that kind of thing. So you can incorporate it. Yeah, so thank you. That's a good one, because that's the measure of customer satisfaction. Because if you think about it, everything you are doing is to make sure that the end user is happy. Yeah, so okay. All righty. So at the end of the day, look at all that. In fact, let me show you.
Can we have a copy of this spreadsheet? Do you mind sharing it with us? just so we know it's our first gap analysis production.
Yeah. There's no so I mean I don't have a problem sharing it because there's no, like I said, I made it up. In fact, I should put copyright. Okay, go follow me. So wherever you shared, this is my my, what they call it now, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, let me be serious.
Intellectual property.
Thank you very much. I'm struggling with English language today. Intellectual property. I don't mind sharing it, but we just have to remember what I said here. So you see this action plan bit, please don't tie it like for like. Do you get what I mean? Like, so yeah, so I know that for some of them, when we say cost of postage, the action plan related to this one, you get what I mean? But for some of them, I was just not filling up the blank spaces. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
so the action plan is just ideas that we're coming up with. It doesn't necessarily tie in like for like. So what I can do is I can send, if I know the BA leads for, I know for Delta and Epsilon, because those are my teams, but I don't know. So if I have, how do we do it? Because if I have the, I don't know if the BA leads are even here. Just so, because if I had the BA leads,
can send it to the BA Guild.
Yes.
Andrew, what's her name?
See, yeah, that's fine. I can send it there. That's fine. I'll send it there to the BA Guild. Yes, I will do that. In fact, that's, you see, we're brainstorming, and BAs, we're problem solving as well. So yeah, that's the shortest, easiest, most efficient way to do it. So yeah, I'll say, let me save that now, and I'll share with the BA Guild. Okay, so I just thought that it would be useful for us to, you know, do a practical session, you know, just so we can see it in practice. And again, like I mentioned before, we do gap analysis without thinking about it. It's just that it's been given a name, you know, but we do it without thinking about it. Anytime you're considering, even when you're saying, oh, see my life, see where I am, I want to I want this to be better, you're already doing gap analysis. Or when you sat down and said, oh, right now, so your desire says that I want to be a business analyst, and right now I don't have the, okay, let's do that one now. So I want to work as a business analyst. That's your desired state, right? And then your current state is that I'm probably doing another job that's not related to business analysis. So what is the gap? I need the skills, you know, and experience to actually work as a business analyst. That's the gap analysis that you've already done. It's just that it's a very simple example. So it's just for us to think about it differently, you know. Yeah, we apply it to everything that we do. Once we're thinking about process improvement, you're already looking at the as is. So what is in existence, and what do you want it to look like? And what are the steps or the things you have to put in place to achieve the desired result? So if we go for any interview and they ask us of gap analysis, it should really be straightforward, because it's something that we do without thinking, like, oh, I want to do this and I don't have the skills. Oh, I'm going to acquire the skills, and you go do it. Oh, this system is not working as it should. Oh, do I need to do an upgrade? I'm going to do the upgrade. That's the gap. You've identified the action plan, you know, so we can apply it to our everyday life. I am now going to stop sharing. Ginika, your hand is up. Is that a new one, or?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. With regards to gap, we have analyzed that. I'm trying to understand, is it the future that determines the goal of what we are trying to get, or where does the goal come to play?
Okay.
The goal of the business.
Okay, so you know how, like, you have, so you know, I gave an example, for example, of I gave an example of like a business goal of maybe like driving your profit margin up by 25%. So in that case, you already set the business goal. But when you now reviewed it, so you're not comparing it with your desire. So it could be a goal of the past, but you're not achieving it. You understand? You remember when we talked about the benefits of gap analysis is that it helps you check whether you're actually meeting your targets. So it might be a goal of the past, like, okay, you set the goal in January and it's December. You're not looking at it. So did I actually achieve that goal? No. So it's not even a past goal, because when you set goals like we want our profit to be 25% margin, our profit margin to be 25%, it's not going to be a once and done thing. You want it to be at least 25% going forward. You understand? So you might be referring to a goal that was stated earlier, but it will inform your gap analysis and it will help you to create new requirements if you are not already hitting that target. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but so I'm trying to reason based on the scenario you've created. Okay. So yeah, we are open to having so many action plans, but in reality, the action plan must align with the goal, right? Irrespective of so many, lists, it must go with the goal, right? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So if you think about it, we said what was that? Let me go back to that thing. We said desired state. So your desired state is usually your goal. So we said we want to shorten the claim time, remember, and we want to simplify the process. So those were the two things that we mentioned. So everything that we've listed under the action plan, you know what, I should go back, and I think I deleted that bit. So I'll go back and put
I was trying to understand if the desired state, which is
I
the
deleted
future
it.
state, is actually the goal. Yes, that's what
I deleted it because I wanted us to see everything in one that's on the screen. So I'm going to put it back before I send it to the current. I need to put the future one back in. That's fine. I'll put that in. Yeah. Okay, that's not a problem. Yeah, it's a good thing you've highlighted it. So what I will send to the BA guild will be the complete one, so that it will show the area, that's the area you're focusing on, the current state, the future state, the gap, and the action plan. Okay. Yeah. So thank you for that question, really, because the what they call it, the future plan is like your goal. That's what you want to achieve. So everything that we did, all those suggestions, as part of the action plan, they will address the desired state, which is the goal. Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries.
You really dealt well with this. I just have a little question. Let's assume I have a project whose deadline is 6 months. When do I conduct the gap analysis? For instance, now, okay, like this, the project we're working on in our team, let's assume it's of 6 sprints. So do I carry out gap analysis after each sprint, or I have to wait a certain time before I do that?
So you know that you're working in an agile setting. That's a good question that you've asked, because today I was at a meeting, a BA meeting at work, and they were talking about interviews and all that. Like, the first thing, they were training us to do interviews, right? So they were saying the first thing they'll be looking for, because my company does agile, they want to be able to filter the people that only know waterfall, from the people that do agile. You understand? So the first thing with agile is for you to recognize that it is incremental. You understand? Unlike waterfall, that you do all the planning and you move to another stage, and then you develop, and then you move to the stage of testing, and then you now deploy, But with agile, you're doing everything per sprint. So like that car, if it's waterfall, they will plan for maybe 1 or 2 years how they would deliver or create, manufacture that electric car, and they will do all their budgeting, do everything, and then they will now manufacture it, and then they will now do testing, and then they will now say, oh, we have now released it to the public. But for agile, they do it in increments. So they would brainstorm, find out the requirements, they will create maybe the steering, they will go again, create so it's in parts, you understand? So you will do everything with the testing, you do create one part, you continue, create another part. So you're adding on. So it's incremental in nature. Okay, so it's not, it might not be a once and done thing. It might not be a one-off. But ideally, this exercise will usually be at the start of a project. So I think that you was one that was mentioning that if a project is about starting, the first people they bring into the project are like the business analyst and the Scrum Masters, because you start doing your, why the Scrum Master is setting things up, like configuring the board and all those things, they're working together with the BA. The business analyst is having those meetings, elicitations with the business, and trying to get things ready for the developers and testers to now join the project, and then everything starts. Remember when you started this program in Sprint Zero, while people were still doing their training, you had already had a requirement elicitation meeting. And for some of you, your team members were confused that why are they already having a meeting? It's because you work ahead of the sprint. So you have to go and prepare enough work for people to consume. So in the same way, you would typically be doing this requirement elicitation, the gap analysis at the start of the project. However, it's not like you cannot carry on doing it, but you would start. Remember, like we said, this gap analysis can help you create your requirement or identify your requirement. So you can start it. But guess what? Requirement elicitation doesn't only happen at the start of the project. It continues throughout the project, remember. So your gap analysis is in the same way. You can do it at the start and continue, depending on the challenges that come and what you need to address. Okay. Right. Do we have any more questions? Can't see any raised hands again. All right. So, Osamina, are you trying to say something? I just saw the blue thing.
No.
Okay, that's fine. All right, everyone. I hope you found. Oh, Ginika. Okay. Ginika, your hands up.
Sorry, please. Yeah. I was trying to get clearer picture on what you said last with regards to the gap analysis requirement elicitation. So can we also do that after getting the requirements? We go forward to research more, comparing what they want with what they want it to be, maybe a similar system. After doing that, you come back, you write your question, who, what, and all of that.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say is that there's no set time. So typically, you will do this at the start. So for example, if you are going for like a process improvement kind of thing, or a system improvement kind of thing, you have to do the gap analysis. You understand? Because you want to really dig to find out what the problem really is. You understand? Like the project I'm working on is they're trying to migrate. So the business, the client, they use Excel, and they're dealing with financial instruments and all those kind of things. And the volume of information that comes, Excel, it's a lot. Excel can be manually, as in you have to do a lot of manipulation and all that. So they are trying to migrate everything, all their data, to a new platform. Now that new platform, it has some functionalities, but it does not have, it can't do everything that they're asking to do. So this is where the gap analysis will come into play. You will now look at the system. What can it do? What can it do? What can it not do? What are the problems and everything? You identify the gaps, and that is where you now start thinking of solutions and development solutions. Where we need to create a button that does this. We need to create this delete button. We need to create upload button. We need to create this page. We need to create an ingestion bucket. We need to So that's where so that's like your foundation. So I would say gap analysis is quite important because, like I said before, you are doing it already. You're doing it already. Anytime you're thinking about improving something, you're already doing a form of gap analysis. It might not be as extensive, but it's a form of it. I don't know if that answers your question. Let me know if it does.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Okay, so in the absence of any other questions, I think we shall now call it an evening, a night. I hope you found it helpful. I will put the document, the Excel thingy, for us on the BA Guild. And just remember that it's not like for like, right? Remember what I said. So we just put the examples there for the action plan. Yeah. Yeah, thank you all for turning up. It was a good turnout, and for the engagement as well.